Right, just before we crack on with this episode, just a quick word about our sponsor, KS Civils and Groundworks Limited, based in Leeds. They have over 296 years of combined experience in civil engineering and groundworks. Led by Director Carl Smith, their team is known for honesty, reliability and commitment to the highest safety and quality standards. They're proudly ISO accredited and fully CHAS Elite accredited. No matter the size of your project, KS Civils and Groundworks delivers professional, trustworthy service you can rely on. To learn more, visit kscivelsandgroundworks.co.uk. Now let's dive back into this episode. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I've got the great honour, and I know I say that a lot, but I do actually mean it this time. I've got Steve Heaney, MC, former Pathfinder, and now author and businessman, and lots of other things that he does as well. I said to him just before we started this, I'm kind of fanboying a bit because I'd recently listened to Operation Mayhem on audiobook, and it's fantastic. Anyone who's not listened to it or read the book, go out and get it. Really go out and get it. It's worth every hour that you listen to it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm really, really glad that Steve's agreed to come on the podcast. So, hi Steve, how are you doing?
Hi Frankie. Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Looking forward to it.
Again, I say to everyone who comes on, if people didn't agree to come on, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I thank you for that. And it's the same questions I'm going to ask you that I ask everybody, which is, where did you grow up? Why did you join the military? What was it like? Why did you leave? And what have you done since? So if you just want to start off with where you grew up, give us a bit of a feel for you there, and what made you join the military in the first place?
Okay, so I grew up in Middlesbrough, northeast of England. Heavy industry town, sort of primarily, steel and chemicals really was what this area was known for. Kind of, a very sort of, a typical, inner city, kind of areas of unemployment and that, a hard, the northeast of England, hard places to live, like any major inner city in the UK. But, so yeah, grew up here, nicknamed the Smoggies, obviously, for that sort of acrid haze that used to sit over the top of the town from the steel and the chemical plants.
Yeah, remember it well.
But an absolutely amazing town, unbelievable people, and a tremendous childhood here.
I mean, I grew up in Hartlepool, so I don't know well or as well as I should.
You're
but
a monkey hanger.
I'm very proud of it as well.
I'm sure.
I am. I don't know why. But you're right, it was an hard time. Mid-80s was when I joined. I joined 85. We probably got something in common. I probably did my oath of allegiance I did do it in Middlesbrough. So we probably did it in the same careers office.
Might have even been the same year, because I think I did mine at the back end of 85, just before I went in.
Right, Sprog.
Yeah.
June 85.
I was a crow to someone.
No, you're right. I had two brothers in the army. And I think everyone just expected me to join. And I didn't disappoint them because I just wanted to get away from Hartlepool. Don't get me wrong, I had a brilliant childhood. I didn't have no hardships or anything like that. But the place was just, it wasn't where I wanted to spend any more time, if you know what I mean. And when I tried to join the Air Corps, and they said that you've got to wait till October, and I was like, nah, I need to go. I need to get out, So they offered me artillery. I was like, yeah, I'll have that. Didn't even know where it was, to be honest. Okay. But off I went in June 85. Never looked back. But you're right, Middlesbrough. I used to like going to Middlesbrough. So I used to go to the record shops there and stuff like that.
Alan Fernley's.
Yeah, I would never admit, if anyone stopped me in the street and said, where are you from? I wouldn't say.
You wouldn't say?
No. we didn't get on well, Hartlepool and Middlesbrough. I think we had a common enemy of Norton or Stockton. I don't know, one of the two.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
So what made you join the military then?
I on the podcasts I've ever done, I'm kind of very sort of what's the word? Sort of focused on why I joined. quite simply, it was the Falklands. That's what did it for me. You know, I was 13 years old, 1982, at school, and fascinated by everything military. You know, the usual stuff, and I'd say this easily without any kind of fear of contradiction. You know, I'd started buying that sort of elite magazine, and then the Falklands happened, and it was a really amazing time for this country because of, you know, as you can imagine, this is the first time a naval fleet of this size had ever sailed. You know, post Second World War, you know, that whole country absolutely wrapped up in the euphoria of sending a task force, not realizing what it actually meant, but you know, it just became that sort of bunting and the ships and families and girlfriends waving everybody off, and there front and center for me, you know, was the maroon beret. You know, guys weighted down with equipment, Bergens, you know, looking grizzled, looking war ready, and it was just an absolute draw. And then obviously, you know, through those early sort of months of Operation Corporate happening and listening to it on the radio, and again, the first time as a 13-year-old watching a war unfold in front of your eyes, you know, the first time the media had, for me anyway, to be able to understand that the media is embedded in war fighting, and you know, and to be able to witness that and then watch it from your living room, and everything that you had read was unfolding in reality, and it was just, yeah, it was just a draw, you know, that got me. It got its hooks in me.
I mean, you just reminded me of something there. So I mean, we had the Falklands, you know, and then there was the embassy siege, which brought, you know, everything was in the press, and that brought it all to the fore for me as well, because I obviously had brothers in the military at the time, and you've just made me think then back. So about it being on TV and in everybody's living room and stuff. The only thing we used to see prior to that really was stuff that was going on in Rhodesia, and seeing that on the news, and I didn't understand. I was too young, you know, to understand what was going on then. But the Falklands, I mean, all those guys who are too young and all the ones left behind, and the general populace and that, it brought everyone together as well. The country was like, you know, as one. The Blitz spirit almost type of thing. Bad example of words, but you know what I mean. So I can understand why it would get somebody geared up to want to be in the military. I mean, to be honest, I'd never heard of the Paras or anyone before I joined. To be honest, I wasn't army barmy. I was dead set on going in the Air Corps, and that was it. And it just didn't happen. You know what I mean?
And I was quite fortunate that my dad, you know, one of his mates on the, because obviously my dad worked on the construction sites and everything when I was growing up. One of his mates' son joined Three Para shortly after the Falklands, so he was going through training when the Falklands was happening. You know, so again, you know, that whole, you know, and you know, we saw 480 Platoon unfold on the TV, didn't we, the Para series? But you know, so that whole sort of listening to it and then having somebody that you knew going through training with the possibility of going out as battle casualty replacements, you know, so training being rushed and then trying to get people ready if the war had gone as badly as everybody had predicted for us at the time. So there was that added draw as well, you know, being able to kind of put somebody who I knew, you know, see their face and then watch it on
Yeah.
the news and think he could be there.
I mean, because you knew what you were going to go and do and what you wanted to do. Did you prep yourself? Did you know about how to prep? You know, get ready for, because it's a big shot when you serve a trainer. I don't care what anyone says. It's always a big shot. But did you have, you know, mentally, physically, how did you prep for that before you went?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, at 13, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And that was it really. And it was in my mind, it was embedded, and that's what I was going to do. At the time, I was in a local running club. You know, so I used to run in Middlesbrough Clairville Stadium. And I was in the Mandale running club there. So even at 13, I was relatively fit. I mean, I was gangly, but I could run. So that just took on a new sort of a new momentum, really. And I started running more. And then I'd got the magazines, and then 480 Platoon was on the TV. So you're watching that, and I was trying to replicate that by, we've got the Cleveland Hills here, and the landscape around here. We've got Rosebery Top, and we've got Chop Yak. So all those places of endless, forestry paths and hills were a tremendous training ground. And my dad was, by then he knew what I wanted to do, so he would drive me out to these places. He'd sit in the car and read the paper, and I'd go and pound the hills and run around Osmotherley and Codbeck and all of those places that were very similar, in geography and look to Aldershot training area.
Yeah, I mean, I was down there last summer, and I spent a week around just travelling around in my camper van around like North Yorkshire Rivers and that. All
Yeah.
in the hull, and it just made me way back up to
Yeah.
And I'd forgot how pretty the place was because it's been years since I've been there, and it is actually a bit of amazing landscape around there. That's just on the doorstep of Middlesbrough, and probably half the people who live in Middlesbrough now have never been anywhere near it.
Yeah. Yeah, 5 minutes out of the city, and it's absolutely panoramic. It's stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like turning up at Aldershot then? I mean, I take it you went into the junior leaders.
No, I went junior paras. So I joined. I actually got on the train on the 6th of July, 1986. And at the time, then junior para was at Pirbright. It had moved about a year before from Aldershot to the Guards Depot. So it was still junior para, it was still para-reg instructors, it was still that sort of whole ethos of para-reg training. It was just located in the Guards Depot. We had our own accommodation, we had our own training program, our own instructors. So they'd literally just moved it, down the road. So for me, that's where I got to. I started there I got on the train on the Sunday, and then first day, we all remember our first day, don't we? In junior para. Got off the train at Brookwood, got on the White Army coach, and that was the beginning of it all.
How did you find it?
Horrific. I say to people all the time, and I have absolutely no regrets or remorse in saying this, junior para was harder than the depot for me. Going through depot para, and what the caveat I've got to place on this is, after 6 months of junior para, where you're technically doing the same program minus P company, if you like. So you're running, you're tabbing, it's weapon training, you're getting beasted by para-reg instructors. So you've got 6 months head start. So when I joined, what tends to happen at the end of junior para, those who are left, because it is a sort of weeding out process. We started with about 60, and I think about 27 at the end of junior para, at the end of 6 months. So by December of 86, about 27 of us joined Depot Para. So you then are transported to Depot Para, and you join what is affectionately known as adult training. So you join a para-reg platoon that's going through at a certain week in time. For us, it just happened that the only platoon going through the depot then was in week 4. So I got there at the beginning of December 86 and joined 525 platoon, who were in week 4 of their training. So they were adult recruits, about, again, must have been 40 plus, and 27 of us joined, taking us up to sort of 65, 67-ish, I think.
You must have outshone all of them.
That's the kind of issue, is that you go there, and you've been in the army 6 months, so and I say this with with a little bit of kind of tongue in cheek, you kind of know how the army operates. You're used to getting thrashed about. You're used to your locker being turned all over. You're used to getting beasted. You're fit. You've been hammered for 6 months. You get there and you're pretty squared away. And they are still only in week 4. They're still finding their feet. And it's not a pleasant environment for them to have you 27 turn up, 26, 27 turn up. The depot instructors don't particularly like you as well because, again, they say outside and you're outside. They say to be there tomorrow morning dressed like this and you're dressed like that. Your uniform's pressed and clean. Your lockers are laid out. So they kind of make an example of you and hammer you even more. So it's a pretty sort of it's an unpleasant environment to get to the depot as well.
I can imagine. I mean, I find it kind of weird as well not to have everyone, on separate. You guys come from, you're already 6 months in, to not then go in and carry on your own to get thrown in. Because I mean, you'll have gone in with like a lot of you usually been a lot younger than everybody else there.
Yeah, I mean, so most of us had probably only just turned 17. So I got to junior para, in the July. So by the time I got to the depot, I'd only just turned 17. The oldest guy in the recruit platoon, I think, was about 28, 27, 28.
That's a big difference.
There is a big difference. Physically, mentally, there's a big difference. They've lived a life. And you turn up as some, young, cheeky, confident sprog, if you like.
Yeah.
That's fit and, knows they're going to stay up all night on a bull night. We know what's going to happen the next day. So it is difficult, and it takes a while to join in. It takes a while to, to make friends. It's almost like two groups. There's a them and us. The junior para lads try to stick together, and the adult recruits, because at this stage you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm 6 months in. I don't think many of them are going to last this long. And then, so you're trying to make friends, and then they embed you in the sections, and there's a bit of toing and froing and sussing each other out.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it must have been. I mean, let's face it. Back in them days, like it wasn't all. Like nowadays, sit down, tell me what the problem is. There was fucking none of that then. I was lucky in junior league, artillery junior leaders. I had a really good troop. I had fantastic senior NCOs as the instructors. Didn't experience any bullying or if you want to, when it was bullying. Didn't experience any of that at all. I can imagine it was very different in Aldershot.
I mean, look, the instructors and the instructors were brutal for a reason. I mean, don't get me wrong. There wasn't any bullying. You weren't mistreated to the point of being filled in, for instance.
Yeah, I was a bit hesitant to using the word bullying there. I didn't mean it in that way.
It was brutal because it was very sort of just beastings. Some of it for the sake of it, just for shits and giggles on their part. But the vast majority of it came with a reason. And I say to people, all of my instructors that I went through junior para with and through the depot were all Falklands vets. The vast majority were 2 and 3 para. I only had a couple of X1 para instructors. So all of them, 4 years before, had been on their belt buckles either clearing Goose Green or, on the slopes of Mount Longdon. So they were kind of drilling down into you and hammering you that the reason we're hammering you, and the reason you're in this fighter position, and the reason you're crawling through mud, and the reason you're doing fireman's carry is because 4 years ago we were dragging bodies off Longdon and we were dragging bodies from Goose Green. So, in my mind, I was kind of thinking, what you're doing is absolutely legitimate, and I don't mind doing it because you've given me a reason why.
And I mean, the Paras is a certain type of infantry, for want of a better word. It is the shock troops, so training has to be hard. You have to weed out the ones that aren't going to make it before the even attempt P Company, because I imagine the attrition rate on P Company, is astounding as well.
Yeah, I mean, every unit in the British Army, has their unit identity and whatever that may be. Para Reg just happened to be a very particular breed. It's non-tolerance. It is, and come on, let's just say it for what it is. A vast disdain generally for the rest of the British Army, even though, don't get me wrong, there's a real acceptance that we can't do what we do without everybody else. But Para Reg, being the animal that it is, just thinks, everybody else you need to keep up. And it's just a mentality, and it's a mindset, and it's something that served the regiment very, very well. And don't get me wrong, it's not a massive immaturity where there's disrespect for everybody else. That's not the case. There is a massive respect for those people around you, because in order to allow you to do your job, you need enablers. And those enablers are your combat service support. They are your engineers. They are your signalers, your medics. So they enable, frontline infantry battalions to be able to close with the enemy, and that's the aim of it, isn't it? But Para Reg is a particular animal, and there's no point beating around the bush. It's just the way that it is.
No, I mean, it's what it was designed to do.
Yeah.
You've got to be out there on your own, and you're right. I mean, no one part of the army can survive without anyone else.
No.
I'm artillery or ex-artillery. And there's the old adage that's saying you can't win a war without having artillery. And which would be nice if we had a bit more artillery in the army nowadays. But
exactly. Yeah, exactly, Frankie.
So you've been down to Para Reg. Were you have trepidations for P Company, or do you think you were all ready for it to go on?
No, I think P Company at the time was positioned in the right place. So I think it was probably about week 13. So, I mean, I can only talk about what training was for me. So training in the sort of late 80s, early 90s at depot, and probably someone's going to jump down my throat at this. I kind of think it was about 24 weeks. I think 6 months. Let's just say that. I might be a week. So P Company kind of comes at halfway through. It comes at week 13, I think. So you've got a massive build-up. And by the way, we've been preparing for that for 6 months. We then get another 9 weeks of it at depot before we go. I didn't take P Company till I think about the February of 87.
So you've had plenty of time to get ready for it then, yeah.
Oh, I'd 8 months. We'd been training for P Company for 8 months. So when it comes, it's a relief that it's finally upon you, because otherwise it's just some horrible thing to look forward to in the future, this nervous trepidation. And all you want to do is get started, because the sooner you start, the sooner it's over, and the sooner we can get to Bryce Norton and get to the holiday camp. So...
Yeah, I've heard that.
Sooner I can get... Yeah, all I wanted to do was finish the stretcher race and get to the Spotlight Club.
I've had a few, experts on the podcast, and they say, and they've all said about more or less the same thing about Bryce Norton. They're just like, the fucking food was amazing. The place was great. It was just so laid back. It was unreal.
Yeah.
you know, RAF running everything. And I was just like, and I don't know why, but I didn't expect that. I envisaged that it would be like P Company for you know, the type of thing. It was still very intense and, you know, the testing and stuff like that. But it sounds like when he's got a prize that it was quite pleasant.
Oh, yeah. It's
I suppose it has to be after P Companies. Then
pontins,
you relax a bit.
pontins and butlins on ice.
So what was P Company like for you then?
Tough. You know, I was talking. I was doing another podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying, you know, it doesn't matter how fit you are and how prepared you are. Psychologically, you probably do. You know, you outthink it. You psych yourself up. So for me, you know, the older shot phase was difficult. I was gangly. You know, I was 17 and a bit. I was about 10 stone soaking wet. I was skinny. I didn't have an ounce of muscle on me. Not a thing. You know, I was see-through. But I could tab. I could carry weight. And that served me well for the rest of my career. But, you know, so the first event, the steeplechase, whatever it is, 2 miles through the woods in 18 minutes, struggled. Really fit lads, racing snakes out. It's a hargy-bargy, in and out of water pits and all the rest of it. You know, and finished about fifth from last. The rest, you know, the same thing with the obstacle course. The milling's milling. Just stand there and punch each other. You know, it is what it is. It doesn't take any skill. It's just stand there and just punch the shit out of each other for a minute. The Trainasium's more about bottle, not a physical event, a psychological event. And then for me, P Company began with the 10 miler. So up until that point, I was probably, you know, mid pack. All you're trying to do is stop yourself getting injured, and all you're trying to do is finish each event. There's only two real events that you can, or there's only two real events where they used to say you could fail P Company. One was the log race. So if you came off the log, i.e. you let go of the rope or you had a weak performance, at the time that was the stick that which they beat you with, that if you fail the log race, you're off. And the stretcher race equally, which is what you used to do down in Brecon. So you'd do, I think it was 2 or 3 days in Aldershot, and you'd do those 4 events. And then you would get on a coach straight down to Wales, get off the coach, and then pretty much into, you know, a hike over the top of the fan. So you'd go up over the fan, and then down the other side, and then tab round and finish at Cumgoody. Cumgoody was like a little battle camp, Nissan hut place at the base of the fan, if you like. And that's where you stayed. You bashed up in the woods. The staff were in there, and you ate compo. So you would do that first day, which I think the first tab was about 17 miles. Straight off the coach, over 17 miles. And then bash her up in the woods, get up the next day, and you do the reverse route of the fan, up, down the other side, cross the road, over fan 4, another, you know, another feature, and then finish at the Story Arms, which, you know, you've seen it on all of the, you know, SF selection things, you know, that sort of telephone box. You'd stop there, you'd have a brew, bit of lunch, and then it was a 10k speed march back through the roads to finish at Cumgoody. You'd bash it up in the woods that night, and then the next morning, the final event was the 10-kilometre stretcher race done as a group around the reservoir. And that was a kind of stay on the stretcher. But you knew then, you know, So for me, when I got down to Wales, I kind of came into my own a little bit because I could tab. I could carry weight. And I'd said before, if there was ever such a thing as 10 points per event, I was probably scoring 10 points per event. So that saved me.
It sounds harsh. I mean, like I said, artillery. I've been over Penny Fan. I did that when I was at junior leaders. Yeah, didn't like it. Funny enough.
Yeah.
I mean, the accomplishment of doing that, passing P company must be, amazing, especially being so young. I mean, looking back at it now, the damage that it could have done to your body with you being young, you were still growing at that age type of thing.
I think the whole, I mean, I think the military in every way, shape, or form has a way of bending and breaking you, especially at a young age. I mean, most of the suffering back then was, blisters, your feet being torn to shreds, and your back from the Bergen. So most people on a night, so we were in the woods at Cumgoody. You get there. I mean, I did P Company in February. It was cold. It was sleet. It was snow. It was dark. It was horrendously, cold. And you're in the woods, and the medic's coming round, and he's pouring tink bends into your blisters on your feet, and putting zinc oxide tape on your back, which at some point has got to be tore off.
Okay.
Yeah. So I could probably, it's there is some suffering to be done, and most people only have got one P company in them. Some people 2 and 3 and go on to it, but your aim is to get through it the first time. So you're carrying injuries. And back then, the medics have got no problem at all giving you a handful of brufen, anti-inflammatories, taping up an ankle that is really bad, because you're thinking to yourself, well, I've got one more event, I've got 10 miles to go, and I don't ever want to do this shit again.
I would imagine it also makes you grow up really quickly as well.
I think you learn a lot about yourself in that period. And again, no matter how long you prepared, I'd prepared for 8 months. I'd been in training for 8 months. The minute they blow the whistle or throw the first thunder flash, you psych yourself out anyway. Most of the time you're hanging on in there. You're staying on the log for love nor money. You're seeing people come off around you, fit guys stumbling, falling, people falling away. You're looking at them going, I would have bet a kidney that you would have passed P Company, and they come off. So P Company is a war of attrition. It's more about staying injury free than it is getting over through the events.
So what was it like getting your beret then?
Oh, I mean, there are a couple of moments in my military career where I can naturally go, what a feeling. So we finished the stretcher race, and then you jump back on the Bedford trucks, and we got shipped round to Senny Bridge camp, and everybody's down on the bottom square. You're all stood there, you got your crap hats on, your smot, your limp and your bleed, there's all that stuff. And you're standing there waiting for someone to read out, and it's a brutal, brutal thing. You're all stood there, whoever, and it's just your name. And it's as simple as Johnson, Sir, Fail, Sir. And you about turn and you march to the back, and that's the end of it. And it goes on. Smith, Sir, Fail, Sir. Brown, Sir, Fail, Sir. And it goes on and on. And you're listening and you're going, I thought he was a pass. And then obviously it comes to your name, and it's just, I mean, it is a life-changing moment when you hear it.
I've spoken to other guys, and they've said there's no feeling like it. Every one of them, even like guys who were in 7 hour HA, because they've been through the P Company and everything like that. When they get that beret, it makes it all worth it. And I don't, There's somebody who's not been through that, I'd find that hard to understand, really.
And and as I said, Frankie, whatever beret, whether it's a beret of the Army Air Corps, when you've or the Marines or whoever, when you've gone through a process and you've got to the end, and somebody's recognised their achievement, then absolutely. But Power Reg is it's an indoctrination more than anything else. It is fear of failure, fear of letting people around you and down, and when we got the berets at the end, it's an amazing feeling, mate. It really is, yeah.
So you've passed P Company now, and we almost touched on it earlier about getting ready for your jumps at Bryce Norton. Are we really excited about that? There's no way you're going to get me jumping out of a plane, by the way.
Yeah, I know, mate. Yeah, but so once you get your beret, that's not the end of it, really. So you stay. So you get your beret, and those who were left then, so in my situation, those who were left, we stayed in Senny Bridge camp, and then you begin 3 weeks of training, what is termed advanced Wales. So advanced Wales is technically the next level of training. So that's more advanced tactics and patrolling, more advanced live firing, aiming to get you through or up to a platoon live attack. Grenades, you fire. So again, when I went through training 84, in 87, 86, 87, you fire the Carl Gustaf 84, you fire the 66, you throw some grenades. They're basically introducing you to the weapons that you're going to get in the battalion. You fire the submachine gun, the SMG, you fire the pistol. So they're getting you ready to go to battalion. So that's 3
I've heard that I have heard that 3 weeks is quite brutal as well.
Yeah, because having the maroon beret does not change the instructor's opinion of you. You're still a scrot. You're still a crow. You're still a chopsy little bastard. You just happen to have a red beret now. So they still hammer you. It just doesn't ease up. But it's a little bit more mature now. Because they kind of know that at that point, unless you drop a major bollock, you're going to go to the battalion. So that's 3 weeks. You finish that. And then the minute you finish Advanced Wales, you're on a coach then, literally driving to Bryce from Brecon.
Bloody hell. There's no leave, no break or anything, is there?
There's nothing. We finished it and we got to Bryce. I think we finished, let's just say, for instance sake, we finished on a Tuesday night, Advanced Wales. You clean the Nissan huts up, you pack your kit, and at 8 o'clock the next morning, you're on a coach to Bryce. You get to Bryce, get to PCAU, which was the administration unit. You check into your Nissan hut, and you technically then go to the hangar at number 1 PTS and begin ground school.
And how was that? Because, again, not experiencing it.
Oh, the world changed in a moment because, you went down for breakfast and there was about 14 different things you could eat. You went down to the hangar and everyone was your friend and it was lovely and it was relaxed and, and
alien.
It was just 4 weeks of absolute bliss.
I can't imagine, but do you think that was intentional, or is it just because it was the RAF in charge?
Just because it was the RAF.
Yeah, so there was no psychological thing going on.
Because they're in charge, aren't they?
Yeah.
You always have one of the instructors would always stay with you, so there'd be a rotation. So you'd do your day, and everyone was nice and friendly. Then you'd go back to the basher on a night, and then he would get everyone together and go, right. Just because everyone's been calling you mate all day.
Yeah, don't get used to it.
Yeah, don't get used to it. And then
so what was your first jumps in that like then? So, they did the balloon in that then, didn't they?
Yeah, the balloon. So that was at Western on the Green. So that's like a little drop zone just outside. So you go there and put the balloon up. The issue with the balloon is that there's no slipstream. So when you jump out of an aeroplane, everyone thinks you drop, you don't. You get thrown backwards and upwards, if you like, because you're caught in the aircraft slipstream. So the whole parachute is unfolding and unraveling while you're in a jet or a propellant slipstream, so you don't feel a drop. By the time the parachute opened, you're out of that slipstream and then you begin the descent. Whereas with the balloon, it's a fairground ride. that sudden drop, so your whole stomach comes up into the back of your throat till the parachute gets time to deploy. But it kind of candles out, breathes, then collapses on itself and opens back up again, while you're falling. So the balloon is a weird sensation.
What height was it at?
800 feet.
That doesn't sound a lot.
There's not a lot of room for error.
Yeah, fucking hell. Oh, we just said that when the parachute opens and collapses me again. I think my ass would have just dropped then completely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But again, you do that first one and you land, and it's a lot of back slapping and all the rest of it, but it's not an aircraft. It's not until you do your first aircraft jump that you're like, fucking hell, yeah. And then foolishly, somewhere in the recesses of your mind, you go, I'm power edge now. Because I've jumped out of an aeroplane with a perfectly square 40-pound container that bears no resemblance to anything you will ever jump again.
I'm laughing because I remember reading bits in your book about it. Yeah, and other guys I've spoke to. And Chris Binch, when he was telling me about when he, the first time he jumped out of a plane, he was just like, "What the fuck am I doing this for?" Because it was kind of brutal, really. Was it similar for you?
So Bryce is designed just to get you qualified. So everything's neat and perfectly edged corners, and it's all done in a nice, relaxed manner. And you do. Generally you're doing single sticks until maybe your final qualifying jump, when you do what they call a sim stick or a simultaneous stick. So basically blokes are going out of either door sequentially, but it's in a nice, relaxed, which leads you into a very false sense of security, because the moment you get to battalion, then it ain't that. You're on an aircraft and you're packed full of whatever it is, whether it's a Sim 30, Sim 40. We used to do Sim 45s out of the stretched Hercs because it had the ability to carry extra guys. There's containers going out, there's door bundles going out. It's mad. There's vomit everywhere. It stinks. It's nauseating. The kit is incredibly heavy and in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So it bears no resemblance to the 8 or 10 jumps you've just done in Hollywood. Yeah.
I mean, you said there, you done your jumps, you think you were power edge, and then when you get to your unit, I suppose, because I have heard the stories about the senior Toms and stuff like that. Was it a bigger shock getting to the battalion than turning up a training?
Yeah. So at the end of you passing out, so you pass out parade, you leave the depot, your families come, you march around the square for a little bit, you have a couple of drinks in the bar, and then you get a little bit of leave. We then came back to the depot after a couple of weeks of leave, and then we got marched as a group up to the battalion. At the end of my training, about 22 or 23 passed out. I think about 4 or 5 of us went to 3 para. The vast majority of the rest, in fact, all of the other, whatever it might have been, 19, 20, let's say, went to 2 para. I went to 3 para because, as I'd said earlier, in that my dad's mate's son was a full screw by now in 3 para, so he claimed me. It's a process of basically putting a name in and saying that this guy should come to the battalion. So I went to 3 para along with 4 or 5 others. So we frog marched up at the battalion lines, straight into the guard room in 3 paras lines. There's blokes zipping about all over, and you're the crow. There's blokes hanging out the window, giving it, "Arr, arr, arr," screaming and shouting at you. You've heard all of the stories by then, and you're thinking, I'm off the Borstal.
Quick question for you there about, so you come into your training, did people have a preference of what battalion they wanted to go to? Or was it you don't really care?
Well,
Was there a favourite that everybody wanted to go to?
Well, they kind of asked at the end. So at the end of the training, they kind of went, right, where do you want to go? But if there is a requirement, then that decision's taken out of your hands. Like for us, 2-para, very shortly after we passed out the depot, we're going on a 6-month tour of Belize. So they needed numbers. So the vast majority went to 2. We didn't have anybody go to 1-para. Everybody went to 2 or 3. 1-para, I think, at the time were out of roll then, so they were down in Bulford on the Arctic roll, if my memory serves me right. So the 2 battalions which were classed as being in roll in 5 Brigade. So back then, 16 Air Assault, was preceded by 5 Airborne Brigade. So in 5 Airborne Brigade was 2 and 3-para. So really, they were going to get everybody out of the depot. And as I said, I got claimed, so I'd asked to go to 3-para and I got my wish.
And they were all still in Aldershot, weren't they?
2 and 3-para were in Aldershot. Yeah, 1-para, as I say, was down in Bulford, I think.
I mean, Aldershot's a strange old place, let's say. Visiting there is a hat. And walking into the wrong bar a couple of times. I soon looked through the window before I walked into the bars a couple of times. The Queen's Hotel, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some sights in there when I walked in. I was like, yeah, I'm staying in here. I think I'll leave. Won't speak. Turned out I knew the barmaid, which was really weird. I went to school with her.
Right.
But yeah, fucking very strange place. Interesting. Then when I went back on my pre-release in 2012, I did my resettlement in Aldershot. Very, very different. Very, very different. It's just not the same place that it used to be at all. I mean, it's, that was jumping ahead quite a bit. So fitting in the battalion. I alluded earlier about the senior Tom and stuff like this. I'd heard stories about you can't go out and get a tattoo unless you ask. You can't wear your fucking desert slippers until you ask. And I mean, was it really like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
So quite brutal, so yeah.
Again, not bullying brutal, but very regimented in such as, you were the new bloke. You got the shittiest room job. You weren't you weren't allowed to wear anything at all. Ali.
Yeah.
The senior blokes would drop their bag of washing off for you, and you would transport all that washing down to Posh Wash in Aldershot and sit there while it was being washed. You would get up at whatever time they decided to come back in off the piss and basically make them a brew, or they would send you downtown to get a pizza. You'd get the shittiest job. You were 9 times out of 10 the 84 man on exercise carrying the Carl Gustaf. So yeah, I mean, all of that, yeah, I mean, absolutely. But it's a rite of passage. And I think if you accept that, it's going to happen. If you push back against that, then you're going to get a slap. Of course you are. If you accept it for what it is and just do it, it ends very, very quickly.
I mean, like you said there, you said it is basically a tradition, for want of a better word, and I personally don't see anything wrong with it.
I don't, and I never saw, the battalion is a rough, hard place. It's full of rough, hard people. And as I say, 5 years previous to that, and I went to 4 Platoon B Company when I passed out, and B Company, as the point company on Longdon got hammered. There were a lot of the senior, but my platoon sergeant, was a Falklands vet. My 2 platoon corporals were a Falklands vet. Company sergeant major, every other platoon sergeant in 5 and 6 platoon. So there was a lot of people that had fought in the Falklands still in the battalion. some still walking around with wounds. So that had been carried over. If you go up there as some chopsy, little scrot, then you're going to find life very, very difficult very, very quickly. But as you know, my sort of approach to it was, as long as I'm only doing jobs, I'm only doing jobs. Somebody wants to visit me in the night with a pick elf and fill me in, then of course you're going to fight back, aren't you? But that never happened. It was only the people that kind of, as I say, didn't accept what it was going to. Someone asked you to put your hand down the toilet and clean the toilet, just do it. Someone asked you to go down and pick their washing up, just go and do it. It will end very quickly.
And then somebody else will be getting it and you're not.
And then the next guys through will get it, and you will be off the hook for a little bit.
So, I mean, you've got to be Italian now. Life's very different from training. What was the process for you to your progression through the Paras to end up where you ended up?
Life in the battalion when you're in camp is quite slow. It's a mixture of, and it's a Monday to Friday thing. You're up, you're out on a run as a platoon. You might come back, and if the company was on what they used to call the lead parachute group, then you'd have kit inspections, you'd have a little bit of training, and that was it. It was sometimes it was just boring. And that's the nature of battalion life. And then all of a sudden, you'd be on exercise, or there'd be a trip coming up, and life would pick up very, very quickly. So that kind of first 18 months for me was great. I was where I wanted to be. Everything I'd ever imagined life to be was what it was. Surrounded by great soldiers, great soldiers, dedicated, committed, motivated men. Because at the time, that's what it was. There wasn't any kind of females in the battalion. It was just, so it was a very sort of testosterone fueled environment, always wanting to do well, looking at mentors, at people that would, that were guiding the platoons and the sections. It was a great place to be. I loved battalion life. It was really great. And then, we got warned off for Ireland. So in the January of '89, the battalion went for 2 years to Belfast, which again was just absolute eye opener.
I mean, 2 years. I mean, I've done a couple of tours of Ireland, that's got to take it out of you after a while. Many stories.
It was rotation. So we would always have one company in the west of the city, which at the time was Woodburn. So there'd be a company deployed there. There'd be a couple of other deployments. There'd be a company deployed down at Rathfire Island on the border, and then you would have camp duty. So, if you went into the city, it was usually about 6 weeks, I think. So you'd go down, do 6 weeks in the city, then come back to camp, and so it wasn't always in Palace. You got around the province a bit.
I mean, let's face it. I was going to say, let's face it. The Paras weren't loved at all over there. Did that become apparent?
Those first, so B Company. So we got there, and B Company was the first company to deploy into West Belfast, into Woodburn. And yeah, I mean, the first time they saw a maroon beret out on the streets, well, you can imagine the reception we got.
It'd have been an eye opener.
It was, yeah.
And especially, I mean, that's your first tour as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Still 19. Approaching 20. So yeah, it is. It was an eye opener. The sort of ferocity at which you were greeted in parts of the city.
I mean, good or bad, Ireland. It's hard to say. I don't like the way it all ended. I think we give too much away in the Good Friday Agreement, but it's nice to see that over there now it's 99% normalised. I wouldn't say it's 100% normalised because there's still shit going on that doesn't get to the news. But I listened to a podcast a while back where a couple of guys went and went back and visited. They went around Northern Ireland and they had a bit of trepidation of going there, but they said they're so glad that they did because they see how it's progressed from the Troubles. And it's nice to understand that, but it's just a strange time that mistakes were made, I think, on both sides. But I don't think we were as bad as people kind of make on, and the way that people look at it historically now and try to drag up things again. And recently in the news, they're bringing back the investigations and stuff. I don't think it's fair on us, really.
Well, it's not, is it? I mean, you are sent to do a job, and we were given a set of rules to abide by, and we followed those rules, and we did what we were told to do. I find it very difficult to kind of to articulate, what's going on at the moment, with these historical accusations, and I just, I struggle in my own mind to understand, how there are prosecutions where and all of these, that the British Army had a shoot to kill policy, and all of this political warmongering that's trying to do an injustice to the amount of people that's lives were lost. I can't remember off my head the exact figure, but I'm pretty certain it's north of 1,000 service personnel lost their lives in during the Troubles in Ireland. I'm pretty sure it's over 1,000 sticks in my mind. So if you think about the injustice that's been done to them, then with this, like you said, this political agenda, let's say.
I mean, I was kind of, like I said there about the Good Friday Agreement. We watched, Stevie Restrick. He was the last soldier killed. That was Besbrook. That was on our tour. He was, a good mate of mine. And then to see his killer get out, he was sentenced to life, and then got out after 18 months. You're just like, that's not fucking right. That's just not right. If it had been the other way around, we wouldn't have got out because of a Good Friday Agreement type of thing. I think it was a very unjust. I mean, saying that, and on the other hand, it helped normalise and bring peace, but there's still a bit of taste in a lot of ours, I think, over it. But as time goes on, it kind of eases, and you see different sides of it, so you can understand, stuff that was happening in the background. But still niggles there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, yeah.
So after Ireland, you're back to Aldershot again?
No. So we were kind of 12 months into the 2 years when I decided that I'd kind of seen it about, and I kind of asked about it, and then, and thought to myself, what am I going to do now? I was only 20. The battalion would never have let me go on SF selection. They wouldn't have let you do it. So, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? What's the next challenge and that? So I put in for PF selection after about 10 months of being in Ireland. So
it was in about away from Ireland.
It was in about the October of '89 when I'd put my papers in. And it was about the November of '89 when I got told I could do it.
I mean, Pathfinders, while I was serving early on, would never have heard of them. It's nothing to do with the artillery type of thing.
Yeah.
Is it common knowledge? I mean, like, because we had, like, you know, the special OPs 473 bar now. We used to see part towards advertising for it, but nobody knew what it was because they didn't give a description. They just said, like, do you want to come and try out for this type of thing? It was all quite a hush hush. Was the Pathfinders kind of like that? Was kept, you know, under the belt type?
Yeah, I mean, there was not a lot. There was not a lot known about it. There was not a lot, you know, of information and sort of stuff out there about it. The only reason I knew about it is one of my full screws in the depot had previously been in the patrols platoon, and prior to '85, the patrols platoons did that role. So 1, 2, and 3 para at the time had an element of those guys who did that role. So they were Halo trained, and they were the brigade's eyes and ears, if you like. It then became very apparent that you couldn't maintain the level of skills required to do that job if you had to fit into battalion life. So in '85, they took the decision to reform the Pathfinders, who at the time had been disbanded, to reform them and centralise those skills into one place where it could be perfected, if you like.
Did they only recruit from the paras, or was it other arms as well?
No, they recruited from the brigade, so 5 brigade. They recruited from the brigade. At the time, it was a Cinderella organisation. It was on the black economy. It didn't officially exist, and it wasn't scaled for it. Every member of it belonged to another unit. So if you passed, even though I passed, I was still on the books of 3 para. So I still belonged to them for the purposes of my position, if you like.
I can imagine the
What that meant,
battalion's not liking that because they can't replace you in your.
no, they can't replace you.
Yeah.
It was very easy to replace a private soldier because he's got 600 private soldiers.
Yeah.
It only becomes a problem when you become a senior NCO and they can't replace you. So he's technically lost, from his peace establishment, he's lost a senior rank. And they don't like it.
So what was the selection process for it like?
So it was, and I'll talk about it it's different now, but I'll talk about it from mine was. So it was about 5 weeks. So I was in Belfast at the time. So I obviously was transported back to the UK, and mine started in the January of '90. My course. So on my course, there was about 27 of us. There was 1, 2, and 3 para, a couple of Royal Engineers, a couple of 216 signallers, and a couple of people from the Guards, division. About 27, I think. Started in Aldershot, and it was just a series. The first 4 or 5 days were meant to replicate P Company. So if you passed PF selection, you didn't need to do P Company to get your beret and do your wings. Very similar to UKSF. Once you passed the course, you didn't need to do it, which again was another massive stickler for the battalions who didn't particularly like that. So those first 5 days were meant to replicate P Company. So there was a 10 miler, an 8 miler, the 2 mile CFT, a gym session, and about 4 runs on the training area, spread over 4 days.
That's quite brutal if you're not used to it.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, how many people did drop out there? I mean,
we probably lost about 2 or 3. We probably lost about 2 or 3 that first 4 or 5 days.
And do you think that's because people weren't ready for it or didn't understand what was going to be happening?
Weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, when we came from Belfast, there was 5 of us. And anyone will tell you, the 4 weeks that I had before I came on the course was in Woodburn. So I was locked in an IUC station for 4 weeks. Yeah, and when you try to run around the internal perimeter of an IUC station, which is about 200 meters square, you know, after about 400 laps around the inside, you've done a mile.
I can imagine.
So,
I mean, coming from
I
that
mean,
island to that, yeah, you just got no time to train for it,
was
really.
absolutely hanging out those first 5 days.
I can imagine.
Hanging out. Yeah.
So, what's the rest of the selection like? I mean, I know there's parts of it you can't talk about.
So you then, at the end of them 4 days, you're then on a coach straight down to Wales, and you're technically there till the end of the course, really, into Senny Bridge, and then you begin what they call the walkabout phase, which is in groups with a DS up on the whichever the daily march was. So one day you'd be up on the Elan Valley, the next day you'd be in the Black Mountain, the next day after that you'd be in the Black Mountains, the next day after that you'd be on the Beacons. And each march is generally about 20 to 24 kilometres, about £40 worth of kit, and it's just legs. The DS is watching you, saying, right, where are you now? You show them where you are on the map. They say, you're going there. I want you to go away and give me a route. Come back in 2 minutes. Then you talk them through the route that you're going to take, and then you set off as a group. And they're basically saying if you're fit enough to be left alone, and can you competently map read? And you do that over about 4 days.
So that's
each day returning back to Senny Bridge.
So that's like the hills selection for the
Yes, it's exactly the same as the hills.
Yeah.
The concept is exactly the same.
But you've done it on a shorter period.
Yeah, it's just
so you've got it compressed more.
Yeah, it's just condensed. So aptitude used to be about 3 weeks on selection. We just did it over 4 days of a walkabout, and then so at the end of the 4 days, you then go on to test week, which is test week. It's exactly the same distances, the same marches. I mean, mine was day one, you do the fan dance. Straight after the fan dance, we went on to point, which was about 28k. 7 hours is the pass mark. It's about 4k's an hour. And these are all individual marches now. And then after that, you went on to Pipeline. We did another one up on the Elan Valley. And then so you finish day 6. The last march is usually you finish about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's about 28k. You get 7 hours to pass. We're back to camp. And then at midnight, we were on the Bedfords to start endurance, which is 64 kilometers, and you get 20 hours to do it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's Senny Bridge area as well.
Well, yeah. So you start off at the Talibont Reservoir, and then you're up over the reverse route of the Fan, and then you're off. Then you're down up over Fan 4. You're across to the Cray Reservoir, and then which is the turnaround point. So the Cray Reservoir is about 30k's in, and then you turn around, and then you come back over Fan 4 up into VW Valley, and then along the donkey track, finishing back at the reservoir. So it's a big loop over all the highest features in the beacons.
And did many drop out on that point?
Yeah, we lost a lot by then. We lost a lot.
Especially when you're going out and you can't go back and you think, fuck that.
Well,
I suppose that's the attitude.
You start off at midnight, so you set off in 10-minute intervals, and you don't see anybody till dawn, because it's just pitch black. And as soon as people are 10 minutes, you don't see anyone, so you're on your own in the darkness till dawn, really. And then dawn breaks, and usually then you can see the panels in front of you, and then you're just chasing panels for 20 hours.
Was it timed? I mean, you're saying timed. It's not a race, is it? Like, I'm not going to say you're going to score better for it.
No, it is a race. It's a race against the clock, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're not going to get like...
You're not racing each other.
Yeah, so it's no benefit in you trying to get in front of
there's no benefit overtaking people. No, you're basically against the clock, really. You get 20 hours.
And quite unforgiving as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's January, and the beacons is the beacons, and January, it's mist, it's driving rain, it's fog, it's snow, it's wet, it's slippy, it's everything, against you, and then against the clock.
Yeah. It just sounds like selection, but you're not getting very at the end of it type of thing, you know.
What I mean,
I mean,
again,
that's simplifying it.
conceptually, it's
Yeah,
designed to do the same thing.
yeah.
If you imagine that, that they're running side by side up to the point at which endurance finishes, they're pretty similar. There's a process of aptitude of building up. There's a process of testing. Those test conditions are pretty much identical up until that point, and then the two courses separate, obviously, because they've got different agendas after that.
So what's after the endurance in that then?
Once you pass that, then there's a weeding out process. There's a culling, and anybody that's injured leaves the course by then, and then the rest begin a week of fieldcraft and tactics. So it's low level, 4-man patrol tactics, classroom based, up on the beacons, putting everything into practice that you learn theoretically. Low level tactics. Again, giving your body chance, because most people are bent and broken by then. So it's a period of recovery as well.
I can't imagine it. Obviously, I wasn't infantry, so it's not something that would have appealed to me, at all. But I am kind of in awe at it. Again, from reading your book and stuff like that. And you said in the book that basically SF without the pay or the beret type of thing, which is.
Well, I mean, that's a laugh and a joke. There are significant differences, of course there are, because there's different aims. The units have different, the draw is that you're going to an area of the army. There isn't the army in effect. It's far more mature. It's far more geared towards a specific role. There's a little bit different treatment, but obviously,
like you say, it's more mature. It's like, again, from your book, it's like you were treated as adults, and I wouldn't say left to your own devices, but you gelled more type of thing.
Well, the focus is on, the battalion. You're surrounded by 650 other men, with a great support network a great combat service support chain. All of a sudden you're now in a 4-man patrol where there is no anywhere near the support that you're going to get. You're isolated. You're left to your own devices. So the skill sets have to be far more. What's the word? They have to be. They have to be far more present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for the rest of the selection process, what did that entail as well?
So after the fieldcraft and tactics, you then go on to a live firing week, which is everything from, same thing, CQB, up to pairs, up to 4-man contact drills, live ambush, grenades, claymore mines, support weapons, a little bit of demolitions, and again, wrapped up in there is back to the fitness. So you kind of, you're tabbing from the cattle grid to the ranges, or you're getting off at Dixie's and tabbing to the ranges. You then spend the day on the ranges for a week, really. And it's all just live firing. Again, it's designed to find out who's comfortable being around live ammunition at such a close range. Because some people don't like it.
But some people don't get the opportunity to.
Well, no, they don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got asked by one of the lads at work, how often did you just go on the range every year? And I was like, 2 or 3 times a year. Unless you run, training for operations or something like that. But just as artillery, we didn't, I don't know if other arms are like that. Obviously, the infantry will do a bit more, but we didn't do enough shooting, really. Didn't go to the ranges enough.
I think that's an army-wide problem, and it always has been an army-wide problem. and whether it's resources, whether it's down to expense, but live fire tactical training is probably something that was never done enough.
Yeah. I mean, so within the Pathfinders as well, you've all got specialist trades, and you've got to do extra. You've got to be a man of many trades, haven't you?
Yeah. So if you worked on the idea that it was a 4-man patrol, and I know things have changed a bit now, but so you kind of have 4 roles. You have the lead scout, the patrol commander, the signaller, and the medic. You would, in the ideal world, spend your time doing every role. So generally when you join a patrol, you're the lead scout. So that's navigation and you're the demolitions guy. So you would go away and do your demolitions training. The next person is a patrol commander, the senior guy, probably have been in the platoon 3, 4, 5 years, will have done a stint at all 3 other roles. Then the signaller, you would go away and do a little bit more comms training than everybody else. Everybody in the patrol would do a comms cadre, but if you were the signaller, then you would just generally just become a little bit more proficient. And then again, the medic. So if you were the medic, you would go away, you would do your combat medicals course, you might do a hospital attachment. Most of the medics would go to a civilian hospital for 6 weeks and work in A&E. Learning how to stitch, learning how to set broken bones, and all of the injuries that you're likely to sustain as a result of a parachute drop or something like that. So you would do a stint at all of those, and you would rotate round till eventually you became the patrol commander.
I mean, that medics bit there, imagine thinking of it. How many people are out there that won't have even realised that they've been stitched up by an area squaddy thinking he was a nurse type of thing?
Yeah.
You know, which
usually the ones who had Frankenstein stitches left.
With a bow.
Pretty much.
No, yeah. So I mean, you've passed the selection for Pathfinders and moved on, and you're in the patrols now. What was the first bit of action or deployment that you came across?
Well, shortly after I got there, Gulf War 1 happened, didn't it? So we'd had 9/11 and everything. So the first thing that we got told was that we were, the idea was that they were going to do if the war had progressed, they were going to drop one of the battalions, out on the outskirts of Baghdad, and then, we were going to clear the streets. So, we got warned off for that. So everyone packed their kit, and it never happened. It was over 100 days later, wasn't it? So that was really it, and that was a very, very quiet period. If you imagine that 9/11 happened and we had Gulf War 1, Gulf War 1 was over pretty quickly, and it wasn't an infantry war. It was mechanized, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an armored war.
And then things just, and then after that again, it kind of all went quiet again, didn't it? Once 91 had finished, there wasn't a lot, happening. So it was generally a lot of training, a couple of trips down to Belize, and ended up doing some stuff down there on the back of a trip. Ended up doing some OP work on the border at Guatemala.
People don't realise that, when I've mentioned to civilians Belize, I missed out on Belize too. You got Belize for? Because it was a bit naughty down there. And they don't realise that shit was actually happening. It's a strange when you try to explain to people about it. Guatemala kind of wanted Belize and stuff like this. It's the political situations there, and stopping the drugs coming in and stuff.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, you're right. It was it was a very quiet time until, like you said, Bosnia Reed had said, and people started getting deployed there. Did you just get involved in Bosnia?
Well, not in Bosnia. So I stayed for 7 years. So I stayed in the PF for 7 years until I got the rank of full screw, and then I got told I was going to be the next platoon sergeant. But at the time, we weren't officially on the orbit as such, so it wasn't formally recognised. So we couldn't get promoted internally. So I needed to go to do a stint. So they said to me, "Where do you want to go?" Now at the time, only 1 and 2 para were in Aldershot. So I thought I might as well, I'll stay in Aldershot because I could still, get back and do. I still needed to maintain my halo status with the PF, so I needed to keep in an area where I could stay with them. So I thought I'm pretty sure 3 para were in Dover at the time. So I thought I don't want to go back to 3 para because I'll be too at arm's length. So I went back to 1 para in about the July of '99, June of '99 maybe, and then almost instantly it was up Agricola into Kosovo within about a month of getting back. And that was 1 para.
Talk about flash to bang then, yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So that was 1 para deployed straight away. So within a month, yeah, into Macedonia, and then obviously, everything that happened in those early stages of Op Agricola.
I mean, that was a fantastic, deployment, for want of a better word. I was unfortunate. I never went to Kosovo. Did Bosnia a couple of times, but I was on an ERE posting at the time at Larkhill when Kosovo was going off. And I've spoken to guys who were there. Now, I just thought it was going to be like a Bosnia tour for them. And I've been informed it wasn't. Some places it wasn't very kinetic. Other places it was. We didn't get to see everything on the news about Kosovo, what was happening. Just that we'd gone in, saved the day, had a bit of a barge over the airport with the Russians.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
Same thing. I mean, we got there and it was on the bus, off the bus, on the bus, off the bus, until obviously that they realised that the Russians were making a play for the airfield, and then I mean, obviously various people have spoke about it, including the late General Jackson, is that all down into the field. There was more helicopters than I had ever seen in my life landing in this field. There were like hornets. There was that many. And they were just throwing ammunition at us, throwing 84s. And that was it. They said, right, you're on the helicopters and you're going to fly to Pristina and take Pristina airfield before the Russians get there. Obviously, everyone's like, are you joking? There's a Russian tank brigade column coming, T-72 tanks, and you're throwing 5.56 at me. What am I going to do with that? And then we've got that whole sort of waiting on board the helicopters, weren't we, to go? And then, and obviously, General Jackson had told Saka, Supreme Allied Commander Europe, who was at the time was Wesley Clark, an American general, that we weren't going.
We're not going to start World War III.
Yeah. We're not going to start World War III.
I mean, I just want to jump back a bit because I should have asked you more questions about. You mentioned halo jumps. I mean, if anyone's listening to this, they don't understand what a halo is, and the other types of jumps as well. Because I don't think people realize, there's hey ho and halo and stuff like that. So, what were they like for you? Because you did experimental jumps as well, didn't you?
Yeah. So basically, once you've got into the platoon, and you then go through a period of continuation training. So immediately after my cadre, we went on 2-week signals, and that was to get everybody up to speed on the radio. The PF had a very particular radio at the time, so it was the PRC 319. So it was a database system. It was online encryption system, very different to the Klansman. So everybody had to learn that. The PSC 510, the SATCOM had just come in. So we needed to learn SATCOM. We needed to do Morse code. So in order to pass the course, you had to send and receive Morse code at 8 words a minute. So again, you're just walking around all day listening to dots and dars in your ears. So we did that. I then went away. You did your DEMS course. You did a bit of an introduction. And then I went away on my Halo course, which again, thanks to the RAF, was just sunshine and sandals in America for 4 weeks. But great in so much as it was in the location. But again, it's not what it's cracked up to be. It's a painful, dangerous experience. Because, obviously it's a gradual process of working you all the way up from 12,000 feet all the way up to 25,000 feet at night in a patrol with all your equipment. That's the aim of the course, even though on the course you technically only went to 18,000. But the aim was then you went, but the aim then is you went back to the unit with an aim of taking that to 25,000.
I mean, once you passed that course and you gone back to the unit, was there much opportunity for the further training to get you up there, or was training kind of sparse as well?
Yeah, I mean, we were jumping all the time. We were jumping all the time. So you had the HAHO, which is the high altitude, low opening. So that's technically a free fall jump. Then at the same time, we were developing the HAHO, which is high altitude, high opening, which is a static line exit from 25,000 feet. The idea being that you're under canopy, you have a nav board, and you navigate, hoping to, and we were looking for about 40 to 50k penetration. So you could technically get out over one area and land 40, 50k's later. That would be the aim.
Yeah.
At the same time, we were developing the tandem so that, non-parachute people could be taken in, strapped to a jumper, whether it be a doctor, a linguist, an intelligence officer. That then went on to you jumping a tandem load, which would be technically a wardrobe, filled with equipment that you pushed out the aircraft and was strapped to your chest. And all of those concepts then went on and on for further development to everything that you see now with dogs and bikes and stuff.
All originated from that?
Well, yeah, it all originated from those early days, yeah.
I mean, the hey-ho jump, that must be surreal. Travelling that distance, it must be quite surreal, that. What was going through your mind when stuff like that happened?
There were trial and error in the very first early stages. There were trial and error. Like, we didn't realise that, once you get out of that aircraft, you're technically, if you get out of the aircraft at 25 grand, you're under canopy before you land for about 40 minutes. Now, we didn't realise in the early stages that you're hanging in the canopy for 40 minutes with the straps around your groin. When you land, you can't walk because you've cut your circulation off. So no matter how tactical you go, you're laid in a field like a monk for 20 minutes till your legs can move your legs again.
Yeah, I would have given that.
It just went on and on till we developed a seat and everything. And
I mean, you've got to travel the world doing that.
Yeah, you're getting buffeted. You leave the aircraft at 25,000, the upper winds can be 100 miles an hour. So you're being pushed along at 100 miles an hour.
I mean, so like all that type of stuff going on, how much of that was like cross-training with like the Americans, or were we ahead of them? Were they ahead of us?
No, we were chasing their tails.
Yeah.
All the time, chasing them. Because the Americans, I mean, at the end of the day, the Americans worked on a situation whereas if they needed it, they just went out and bought it. They were kind of their own jump masters. We were shackled in a way to the RAF. So no matter what we did, we had to request it, then they accept it, then we trial it, then we prove it, then it's instigated and brought into service. That could take a year, 18 months. If the Americans, whether it be the SEALs, whether it be Dev Group, whoever, They see a concept and they just go out and buy what they need and begin. So we were forever chasing the Yanks, forever chasing them.
Who was better?
Difficult to say. But I mean, it is because, I mean,
Yeah.
don't forget, I mean, by that stage, the jumpers who were asked to do this, always working under Jake's umbrella, you'd have an element from Hereford, Poole had lost the parachuting capability by then. So generally it was Hereford and us that were doing the trials on these things. And some really capable people, capable people, whether it be down at the force projection wing or wherever, were trying to drag the RAF into where we could compete.
You just put bureaucracy and
Money as well.
Money, yeah,
money.
that's always
It was
money,
literally
isn't it?
money.
It's always down to money.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's move on a little bit, a bit now. So you've been to battalion, and then you go back to the Pathfinders.
Yeah. So I went back in about the October of '99. By that stage, the platoon had moved to Watersham, in preparation for moving to Colchester. So the brigade had gone to Colchester. The PF were getting a camp built. We were going to get our own compound built, and at the time they said, right, well, until you do that, we'll house you at RAF Watersham, where the Apache went. So we were based out of Watersham. So I went back there as the platoon sergeant.
By this time, had things changed? Did you have a budget, or were you still?
No.
Bloody hell.
Still poor.
It just doesn't seem right.
Still buying your own kit.
Yeah. How about, I mean, did you get, you trained on different weapons and stuff like that, as opposed to the SA? Was the difficulty in acquiring them through service?
Well, no, because due to the relationship of officers that served with us, and the fact that most of either the chief of staffs or the brigade commanders had been at Hereford, then we got weapons from there generally.
And how can I put this one? Did the battalion look on you favourably, or did they want nothing to do with you?
No, I think by then there was a kind of a mutual respect, if you like. We'd done enough. You were always going to struggle with the kind of real hardcore battalion blokes who still couldn't quite get their head around the fact that blokes weren't going to the depot to get the maroon beret, and blokes didn't do P company. So that was always a struggle. Getting people to come on the courses was always a struggle. The COs of the battalions just didn't want to let their best Toms and Lancejacks come to us. Why would they?
Yeah, fair enough.
So we struggled for a long time.
But that's what you needed.
But then we went through the process of, we become a formally established, and then the selection process went tri-service then. So the same as SF selection, we got volunteers from the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines.
Did you notice a difference in it then when they came in?
Well, just bigger exposure, more people on the course, so far more exposure.
Level of recruits that were coming in, was it different, or was it just still down to the people who were getting there?
The biggest issue we always ever had was people coming unprepared. So if you forget the blokes in the brigade who knew what was going to happen to them when they come, when you're talking about the wider army or the Navy or the Marines, and I've said before, everybody in the world had selections diary. Everybody in the world knew the marches. Everybody knew what fitness standard you needed to be at to get through the hills phase. It was common knowledge. We didn't have that much exposure at that point, so we had people turning up who just weren't prepared for the intensity of those first 10, 12 days. So most of the attrition and the loss was in them first 12 days through people who just hadn't prepared enough.
But I mean, you've got more people coming in,
Yeah.
so you're going to get more numbers coming out the other end as well, are you?
Well, not necessarily. You can pack a football team
Yeah.
with 11 players, and not all of those 11 players are going to be good, are they?
Yeah,
Doesn't
true.
matter what
True.
you pack your ranks with. If
It's
the person is not prepared, it can start with 500 people. If 490 of them hadn't read the leaflet properly,
fine. Yeah. I mean, I want to move on now to Sierra Leone, if you don't mind.
No, yeah.
So, anyone who doesn't know about what happened there, I'll kind of give it my view. We went over there to do a job. You got plonked in the middle of the jungle at Lungilol and left to your own devices to save the world, more or less.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before. You need to shave your head, you Brunner. When I read it, I was listening to it. I was just like, wow. This is it's like boys' own stuff. It's like, you remember the old Commando magazine, little comics? It was like that type of thing. I mean, do you want to just run through it from almost start to finish, really?
So we're now into May of 2000. So Sierra Leone. I mean, if I was to be brutally honest with me, if someone had said to me on the Friday afternoon, "Can you go over to that map board and point at Sierra Leone?" I might have struggled. It was one of them places. It had been engaged in a civil war for about 10 years. It was about 70,000 dead. It was technically gangs, wasn't it? It was gangs in pursuit of conflict, alluvial diamonds, and the movement of those diamonds out of the country through Liberia and into Europe. It was about a $500 million a year business. But what came with that was the destruction of the country. The government had collapsed. It was civil war, and the gangs, of which the biggest of the belligerents was the RUF at the time, the Revolutionary United Front. Their sole aim was to march on Freetown, take Freetown, and then self-rule. The UK at various times had sent over sort of operation and monitoring and liaison teams, of which General David Richards was one of them. They'd been across and realised that the effects of what could happen. The government at the time had said, right, we were going to provide some support. What that was a task force, which was headed up by one para with some attached arms, so a company from each of 2 and 3 para, and then some attached arms. So the battle group probably numbered about 1,000, maybe 1,100, and we were asked to send a contingent at the time. So we had a commitment to the brigade of 12 men. As long as those 12 men remained in country to support the brigade, then we kind of got told we could take the rest. By the time we took people off courses and got people back, and those that weren't injured, we could probably field about 33. So the 33 of us joined the task force. We flew from. I'll kind of cover. I'll brush over the initial bit because otherwise we'll get bogged down in it. Is that there was a holding area in the UK. We moved to South Cerney, which was the Air Mountain Centre. We jumped on aircraft and flew to Senegal.
Yeah.
We got off in Senegal at Dakar, got straight off the aircraft there onto C-130s, and then basically flew straight into Sierra Leone, landing into Lungi Airport, which at the time was an operational airport I use the word airport loosely. It was a couple of buildings cut into the middle of a jungle with a tarmac strip. So that was it, really.
International airport for them, isn't it?
That was the international airport, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a UN contingent there. Nigerians and Pakistanis were manning the UN, so there was a contingent of UN troops camped out on the airfield. One para inloaded. The idea is that in Freetown, not only did the embassy need to be secured, the British embassy, but there was a lot of workers in there. And what the British termed entitled personnel, in other words, British passport holders. One para were tasked to basically get into country, secure the embassy staff, and then basically start extricating workers and passport holders out of the city to the airport, put them on those C-130 aircraft and fly them back to Dakar. At that point, then, they were given a choice of what to do. Predominantly get them out of the city, as the RUF had made no bones about they were going to march on the city.
I mean, the atmosphere must have been terrifying for the civilians and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, these gangs had raped and pillaged their way, you know, through the city. It was murder and brutality on an industrial scale.
I mean, that's the other thing. As I was going through your book, I was talking to the young lads at work. You know, they're only like early 20s. No idea about stuff like that. Never heard of it. You know, never heard of Bosnia, for God's sake. It's just because it doesn't happen outside the window, outside your front door. A lot of people don't really care. And it's not until you just get involved and go there and see it happening that, you know, you would have felt right and just in what you did.
Well, I mean, in anything that you ever did, I mean, I don't think I ever went anywhere and thought it was absolutely pointless. Everything had a reason. Everything had a purpose for being there. And probably of all of the things, Africa was always it, because it was such a catastrophe on every level. Africa, you know. And, you know, it was only when we started getting the intelligence briefings about what had been happening to these people, and then you land in the country and you witness it. I always say it, and I've always ever said it, you know, the British military is a force for good, regardless of what's in the newspapers, regardless of what's happening in courts and all the rest of it.
Now, we don't go in to conquer.
No.
2003, but again, that was different. You know, that was that's not for a discussion on here, really. What I'm talking about, obviously. I mean, one of the things you mentioned in the book was the lack of equipment you had.
Yeah. Everything was in short. I mean, in my whole career, I don't think I ever had a surplus of anything. It was either make do or do without, or make do with what you've got. Sierra Leone was no different, mate. The problem that Sierra Leone is that we moved that quick from the UK. We were on an aircraft and out of the country within 48 hours. And that includes time at the Air Mountain Centre. The operational ammo hadn't even left the UK. So we landed there without the operational ammunition. It hadn't got into country. So, you know, those first 24, 36 hours, you might as well have been throwing stones.
I mean, the operation changed, didn't it, as well, from like a evacuation process for entitled people. And they decided to stick you out up at Longy Low as almost bait, really, for want of a better word. But I think that's quite a good word.
Well, it was.
Besides the
that was Sir David's sort of approach to it. Once the operation had got going and they were rounding people up, so the guys were going knocking on doors, and of course the civilian population then are like, well, if you're here now, why do I need to leave? So we couldn't get them on the aircraft. You can't forcibly remove them. They just said, well, we're going to stay. That then led to Freetown itself needing to be secured. So the battalion, one power, were pretty much on the ground doing op banner. It was patrols, it was checkpoints, it was securing critical national infrastructure. The RUF, as a group now, had already stated that they were going to march on the city. One para just didn't have the numbers. They were so spread out. The operational footprint was so big that it was just, they were stretched. We've then got, so if the airport had fell, if there'd have been any movement on the airport, the airport was left with its perimeter defence and its token force on there, while the battalion itself was scattered around the city. So David Richards, in sort of consultation with Paul Gibson, who was the CO1 parade, said, right, what we need to do, and the jungle was impenetrable. Of all of the jungles around the world, it was impenetrable. It was mangrove. If you weren't on the main track, then you couldn't move. Or you could, but it would be a very laboured process. So any movement of the rebels had to come down these tracks, and those tracks were few and far between.
Yeah.
The main track kind of ran from Port Loko in the northeast of the country, down through Lungi, which was like the last major trading village, and then towards the airport. So the idea would be, right, let's put them in the middle. They would provide early warning and slow down any approach onto the airfield while we get the evacuation done. While we round everybody up and put them on the aircraft, we need to buy time.
So you're there with a stopgap, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts when you first got to Lungi Lol?
When we got briefed about it, again, so they'd said, right, you're going to get on board them 2 helicopters and you're going to go into this village, and we think the RUF are going to be there. And at the time, they numbered about 2,000. So they had about 2,000 fighters. They'd had desertees from the Sierra Leone army. They had captured equipment from the UN. So they were heavily armed, and about 2,000 of them. So when we kind of thought about it in the very brief moments we had before we were told to get on the helicopters, the village was, where it was located, there was not a lot of places to kind of extract from. If we'd have been cut off on the road, we'd have had to come through the jungle. And you're talking about 40 minutes flying time. It was about 35k. So it would have been 35k through the jungle, yeah.
While I was reading the book, I looked it up on, Google Maps and that, because I couldn't envisage, and you describe it really well, the escape routes, the evacuation routes, stuff like that. And I was like, I want to look at this on a map. I want to see it, see what it's like. And it's a fucking middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It really is. But you're on about that track in the railway track coming down.
Well, when we flew in, I was on one of the Chinooks, and there was we had 2 Chinooks, and it was flying across the top of the trees, and I was looking out to the back of the thing, looking at the mangrove, thinking,
you're not going to do that. Yeah.
What happens if we get cut off? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was an interesting thing that you also mentioned in the book about the UN that was already in Lungi Lol, who kind of gone native. That's kind of, is that bizarre? Probably not. They've been there that long.
No.
And the guy in charge of them seemed quite a character.
Yeah, I mean, so their leader, Mojo,
Yeah.
Typical, I mean, African militaries are a class, they're a tribal system. A lot of the Nigerians that were in that village have the old scars on their face, the tribal marks, warrior marks. So they are very tribal. And it's a very, there's a hierarchy attached to all of that. And he just happened to be the senior guy. But yeah, I mean, they took their uniform off, married local girls in the village, and left their weapons to rot.
That's fucking mad. You couldn't make stuff like that up, could you?
Couldn't make it up, no.
So you've landed in Lungi Lol. How did the locals take you?
Hesitant at the very beginning. I mean, don't forget, anybody that had been in that village before with weapons was murdering and killing and raping. So, we arrived unannounced, and all of a sudden you're running off the back into this village, and it was just a mud-hutted village. There was no announcement of our arrival, and there we are. And the guys are zipping about. At that point, we didn't know if we would come under fire. So the idea is to get into the village, get under cover, and sort of get a lie of the land and find out what we're up against, if anything. So the blokes are zigzagging around, and the locals are just staring at you like you're daft.
Who approached you first? You approaching them, or they come to see you?
We approached them.
Yeah.
So once we'd settled down and got everybody into position, and the Nigerian officer had made himself known to us, we kind of explained to him what we were there to do. And as I've said in the book, we were told we were only going to be there for 48 hours. After 48 hours, the extraction of the entitled personnel in the city was expected to be done. Then we would be pulled back out and retasked. There wasn't enough room on the helicopters for us to take any burdens, so we just had belt kit, weapons, and a day sack. And in the day sack was a little bit of extra ammunition, and an American poncho liner, and a poncho. So that's all we had, in thinking that we were only going to be there for 48 hours. And there wasn't enough There wasn't enough ration packs in the country to take more than 2 ration packs a man anyway. There wasn't enough. There was nothing in country. We didn't have any maps. We had no anti-malaria tablets. There was nothing.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You've got to, I would say, I don't want to put this the wrong way, but that'd probably knock people's confidence as well, knowing that they haven't got the equipment. But in your job, you've got to just get on and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a certain confidence about, those around you, when don't forget, and the benefits of a small unit like that is, it's very close, it's very tight. Everyone's, of similar standard. We've got, guys have been away, and they've gone through these rotations of training and deployment. So there's a certain level of confidence in your own abilities.
So how long did it take before you had any kind of contact with the enemy?
So after that first night, if you like, we landed about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on day one. So we then get into nighttime routine, and as you know, the jungle, quietens down. It just becomes pitch black. The issue that you've got is that the village was open, so it was a trading route. So you've got lots of locals coming into the village at all times during the day. We're not fighting a uniformed enemy. We don't know what they look like. There are villages all around which people are coming in now with reports of the RUF being in their village. There's raping, murders, pillaging. So these people are on the run now, looking for a safe haven. So it's just just movement all night. And as you can imagine, it's not like a traditional military position. You are letting people into the center of your defensive position, and you don't know who they are. It's a very difficult thing to manage, and it becomes, your defenses are porous. Your defenses are porous.
I mean, did the locals get told that you were there, and then they thought maybe you were there to protect them?
Once we'd opened a dialogue with the village, once we'd opened a dialogue through the Nigerians with the village, we kind of expressed why we were going to be there. We told them what was going to happen. They knew what was going to happen because people were coming in and telling them what was going to happen. They knew that they were next. So we then went through a period of that first 24, 48 hours of relationship building. And this goes back to the whole British Army sort of coin operation. So we'd now gone from this sort of extraction of people into what is technically counterinsurgency, hearts and minds. And we needed to get them on side. even though at that point we still thought we would be leaving after 48 hours. So they kind of settled down and they very quickly dropped into normal village life. The ranks of the village swelling. When we went in, it was probably about 600-800 people in there. Within the first 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, there was probably close to 1,000 or 1,500 people sleeping in the dirt all over that village, looking for security.
How did that make you feel?
Well, concerned, massively concerned, because we didn't know who they were. So obviously we're now going to the villages and saying, right, you know these people, you know your village, you know the outlying villages. If there is suddenly an influx of male-age fighting men in this village that you don't recognise, you need to tell us. So we're trying to, we're setting up a bit of a patrol routine, we're setting up hasty defences, and we're waiting for the first message to say, right, 48 hours, move back to the HLS, you're going to be pulled out. And after 48 hours, that didn't come. Instead, we got a message saying that the mission had mutated and that we were going to stay there because the extraction wasn't going according to plan.
Yeah, I bet he's went so happy about that.
Well, we were on the last bits of food. The climate there was about 90% humidity, 45 degrees. It rained incessantly for 2 to 3 hours every day. We only had one set of kit. We were sleeping on the jungle floor. You're soaked, you're sweating. We had patrols out. There was no water until over that 48 hours until we got into the village and got them to kind of start working for us. It was. It becomes quite uncomfortable.
Did you get a resupply?
We got one. So after the first 48 hours, they then said, you're going to be out here. But bearing in mind that, radio batteries, yes, we had lithium batteries, but, they're not going to last. When someone says to you the duration of that is open-ended, we had no scoff left after that. So then they said, right, okay, we'll send a resupply out. So after about 3 days, a helicopter came into one of the areas that we'd identified as a HLS and brought a few additional bits of stuff, but nothing, no comforts. I think it was another ration box each and little bits of I think that was the first time we got some Larium delivered as well. Yeah.
A bit late by then, but yeah.
But we were on the antipsychotic malaria drugs.
Yeah. So, I mean, the villagers by this time are kind of helping you out. I mean, you mentioned in the book about digging pugil sticks in and stuff like that.
Well, after that first 48 hours, and, we realised then, and again, reports are coming in, the villagers are coming in saying, we're from this village and the RUF are moving. We were getting intelligence updates over the radio. The RUF are at Port Loco. The RUF are now moving towards you. The RUF are here. Villagers were coming in and saying, we've seen rebels, we've seen this. So we knew after kind of 48 hours that we needed to move from temporary defensive positions to a more permanent defensive position. And that involved trenches. That involved, how do we stop people? If you imagine, if we were working on the fact that there was 2,000 rebels, by this stage there was 26. There was only 26 of us. We only had 5 magazines and a bandolier each. So there's 300 rounds. Times by 28, up against 2,000. You're talking about odds of 80 to 1.
Mental.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental.
Yeah. So we were thinking, how the hell are we going to stop them? And, and there was obviously the jungle in front of us. So what we'd said is, if they're going to come, they've got to come that way. So we positioned most of the defences across the frontage. And then we said, how are we going to slow them down? Because if we can get them out in the open, if we can keep them out in the open, then we can put them down. The minute they start getting into the village, and then it becomes, you're then into close quarters, you're then into hand-to-hand stuff, and, So we said, right, we need the villagers to clear the jungle. So we then went to them and explained to them that, if you help us, there's a chance you're going to get through this. If you don't, then we're all screwed.
And how did they take that?
Started to help.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they had work parties out. They were, you're talking about kids with machetes. They started cutting down all the jungle to the front. We then kind of went out to the front and sat there looking back at the village and going, right, where if I was going to attack, where would I do it? And then obviously we made out a plan. We started, how do we slow them down? How do we make defences? We didn't have any defence equipment. So what do you do? So you then go back to, what will slow people down? And the only thing then was nature. So we asked them to go and start cutting down bamboo, which was in an abundance, as thick as your arm, with lengths kind of 10 metres long. So they got them cut it down, and we got them to sharpen the sticks, and we ended up making these fields of punges. The idea being that if we could keep them out in the open long enough, then we could put them down.
So what was it like when they first came in then?
So we were there for the first 48 hours, and then it got extended. We were there then for another 7 days. So it wasn't until day 9 that they attacked us. So we'd been there for 9 days now. The food was scarce. You had one set of kit, soaking wet, sleeping on the floor. Blokes, you know what it's like yourself. Your body breaks down. People are covered in spots and rashes. They're dehydrated. You lose your focus. You lose your concentration. You're on edge all the time because you think you're going to get attacked. So it was about 02:45 hours on the 17th of May when the first attack came. That was obviously, it was pitch black. So I was in the command ATAP, if you like. We had a position back from the front of the jungle. We'd had the punjies out in front, and then the blokes were in the trenches on the inside the jungle, so covered in that first row of foliage. Obviously, we had a lead sentry position out covering the main road in. And he'd witnessed, so he could see these bodies crawling up the side of the track. And what they'd done is they were in the camber of the track. So they were crawling towards that front defensive position in the track. Now, obviously, to go back to all this nonsense in the stuff about shooting and all the rest of it, we were on tight rules of engagement. It was technically the yellow card in Africa.
Bloody hell.
You cannot fire until fired upon.
Yeah. Which would that have been any difference?
That first guy got up to almost within sort of 10, 15 feet of the front trench, built up and fired a round and really got a stoppage.
Really?
Which was the last thing, yeah. So obviously then the guy on the front trench with the jimpy just opened up.
Night. Yeah.
Yeah. Which then brought everybody to life. And then it's the engagement then.
And they were coming from all sides, weren't they?
All along the front, along the frontage. Our fear was that obviously if they'd managed to envelop us and get round the back of the jungle, round the camp, round the village, then they would have been behind us and they would have cut us off. We'd have been nowhere to go. So the idea was keep everything at the front as long as possible.
They funnel them into the killing zones.
Well, funnel them in, yeah. Try to funnel them in, slow them down. So obviously it was pitch black and the guys are obviously engaging. Now I had a 51mm mortar. Now there was no HE in country when we left. The only rounds that they had for it were Alum. So I had a day sack with about 18 Alum rounds for the 51 with me. So my thought was that if I can get out of the jungle in front of the position and start putting the Alum up, then it would light all the area up that we'd cleared and the blokes would be able to see them. And then if they see them, they could pick them off. So the idea then was to get out in front of everyone with the mortar and start putting up the Alum.
I mean, by this time there was a Royal Marine officer with you, wasn't he?
Yeah, so what had happened is, as you know, there's obviously a strategy for a relief in place. So while one para task force were on the ground, the amphibious readiness group, which was technically 4-2 Commando on HMS Ocean, had been turned around from where they were sailing, and they were sailing full steam ahead to Sierra Leone. The idea being that 4-2 Commando would be taken off Ocean and would do a relief in place with one para. 4-2 Commando's recce platoon were obviously earmarked to replace us. So on the morning of the 16th, the Royal Marine officer had been flown in to do a recce. So he'd been flown in on a Sea King, and he'd got in mid-afternoon on the 16th, with a view to being picked up later on that day and flown back out. But to his surprise,
Yeah.
got a radio message saying that he wasn't getting picked up and he would have to spend the night with us, which was the night of the 16th. So at 02:45 hours, he was laid about 3 feet to the side of me, next to me on the floor, when the fun and games began.
I mean, talk about bad timing or what?
Well, fucking good timing for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, fucking hell. Again, in your book, you said,
And by the way,
he had no kit and only 20 rounds. He just went,
well,
wow.
I mean, that's it. But by the way, now he's a highly, highly decorated senior Marine officer.
Yeah.
A really great guy who's had an amazing career.
I mean, that's a hell of a baptism of fire for him, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, who himself holds the MC as well.
So, I mean, they're coming in and attacking you. And then again, in the book, you describe how you're dropping the loom over the area. I mean, you've got to control that battle as well.
Well, yeah, I mean,
basically in charge of it as well.
Well, of course there is. I mean, we only had, the blokes only had, 150 rounds in the magazines and a bandolier. So they only had 300 rounds. So if you do the math, and if you kind of worked on the bizarre numbers that the army works on, and that if you start to think that rapid rate of fire is 30 rounds a minute, you've got 10 minutes of ammunition. Yeah. 10 minutes. Before we went in, because of the nature of where we were being dropped and how precarious it was, Paul Gibson had turned around and said, I will have a platoon of one para on permanent standby to act as a QRF. I'll keep one of the SF Chinooks here, and if you send us a report, I will have them out to you. So if you look at the kind of timeline on this, even if you had a platoon of one para asleep next to the aircraft, 5 minutes to wake them up, 5 minutes to get them on board, 5 minutes to turn the aircraft up, 35-40 minutes flying time. We had about an hour that at best. So if we sent a contact report, we had an hour before we would see them. So even in our minds, we got to hold on for an hour.
And that's rationing of rounds, and
that's rationing of ammunition. Yeah. That's stopping people from getting inside the village. That's dealing with casualties. If you were to look at the thing holistically, and if you were to go 2,000 rebels, if they all turned up, and if they all surged the village, and if they all moved towards us, and if we were to repulse that attack, we have 10 minutes of ammunition. We've got to last an hour. That doesn't include casualties. That doesn't include the village being enveloped and them getting inside the village. And then what do? You can't fire in the dark willy-nilly, indiscriminately. By now, there's 1,500 innocent civilians asleep on the floor in that village. So it's not a free-for-all.
And like you said, you're controlling the guys in the trenches, aren't you, at the same time?
Well, you're trying to just make sure that people are conserving ammunition.
Because people are going to get excited, aren't they?
Of course they are.
Yeah,
Of course they are.
someone's coming at you. You don't hit them first time.
Well, yeah, people are just gonna, people are just gonna keep firing until they put someone down.
I mean, how long did it go on for? This whole battle.
Well, it happened over three, so they attacked three times, if you like. So they came the first time, and again, I mean, look, I can't remember. I mean, bearing in mind, it probably took 10 minutes for us to crawl out the jungle. We were probably out firing in front of the jungle for another 15, 20, 25. And then they kind of died away. Then they came back again and had another little pop. What they were doing was probing. So they probed from the left, they probed from the right. They weren't naive. They realized, and don't forget, if they'd been in that village doing recce's all day long, it was a normal village life. We couldn't stop people coming in. The village is open. It's not fenced. It's not a perimeter defensive position. It's an open-ended village with multiple areas of ingress. So they could have just been walking around recceing. They were just probing, looking for weak points. How could they get into the village?
I mean, with them coming down probing on a night as well, I mean, how effective were they? Did they know? Did they know where they were going, or were they just fucking throwing people?
No, they knew where they were coming. I mean,
yeah.
If you used the track as the sort of as a linear focal point, they knew that they were going to be either side of that track coming towards that sort of cleared area. I mean, how effective were they? Well, our guys are down below the ground. We're firing at things we can hit. There's discipline. There's target identification. There's conservation of ammunition. There's the loom. The way that I was putting the loom up was such that, we were dropping the loom behind them, so they were constantly lit up while we were in darkness. But, if you add all that in the mix, then, of course, they were going to suffer heavy losses.
I mean, it's the second night. Again, you just probably weren't, expecting it to come in again on the second night, or even the third night.
Well, so when we send a contact report after the first night, bearing in mind it was 02:45, it started getting light about 5:30. So we were thinking that if we'd sent that contact report, so the contact report was sent pretty much instantaneously. So let's say it went at 2:45, 2:50. If we're thinking in our mind that in 1 hour's time, we're going to have a Chinook with a platoon full of paratroopers on board. When that didn't happen, when it started to get, dawn started to break and they'd probed 3 times and then it all went quiet, we're now back in the, so the blokes are in, they're rebombing, they're magging up and doing all the rest of it. Myself and the ops warrant officer at the time, who was an X2 para guy called Wags Wardle, then did a quick run around the positions, make sure that everybody was all right, bit of distribution of ammunition, and then making a view on what we're going to do now. So at that point, I'd said, right, well, you stay here and control this, Wag. I will go and mark the HLS because surely the QRF must be coming. So at that point, I took one bloke from each patrol and went back about 400 meters to the south of the village to a clear area where we knew we could get a Chinook in. And that would have been the grid that was sent in the contact report. So we're now out of the village. It was still dark, but you could see the dawn through the trees, waiting for this Chinook to come. That was probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So just still dark. Been there about 20, 25 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, lying in the mud, in the dirt, and waiting to be, thinking we were going to get them surrounded. And then I could hear the Chinook. I could hear it in the distance. I had an IR strobe. I had an IR Firefly. So I'd set the Firefly off, knowing obviously that the pilots would be from with the SF crew and that they would be on NVGs. I could see the Chinook by now, and I saw it swing round, and he just came in nose in and just bounced the Chinook straight into the clear area right in front of me. So obviously now the Chinook bounced down landing. I'm right on the nose of the Chinook now, looking up at the two pilots, thinking the ramp's down, and
Where
I'm
is everyone?
expecting, that I'm thinking a minute to offload everyone, and then the Chinook's going to be off. I'm now looking up I'm at the nose of this Chinook, and it's like a minute, 2 minutes. I'm thinking, right, what? No, there's something wrong. Why isn't there anybody getting off? So I got up and I walked down the side of the fuselage underneath it to the back of the ramp. And the ramp was down, and there was a guy stood on the back. And the guy was the one para adjutant, who was an ex-PF officer. So he'd been in the PF with me, and he'd gone back to one para. And so obviously I walked up the back of the Chinook, which was empty, and we had a chat.
Yeah, I can imagine a few choice words said.
Do I think? So we had a bit of a chat. I mean, look, I said, and he's a great guy. I see him and that, and it's nothing. One para were just stretched. There was nobody to send, and he said, Steve, I think the CO had sent him because of his relationship with us, and that if it had been anybody else, it might have gone slightly different. So he was like, Steve, there ain't anybody, apologies, but you're going to have to stay.
So on that Chinook, there was no ammunition resupply?
Nothing.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
So I got off the back of the Chinook, and it took off. And then
demoralising.
Went back, and the four guys were lying in the dirt now. Obviously, the Chinook had took off. It was now almost dawn, so I'm looking at their four faces, and they were like,
what's happening?
Where is everyone? What the fuck? So, yeah. So that was it.
I mean, I knew that, the one para overstretched and that. But did you feel any form of betrayal?
No. Why?
Yeah, I mean, you say, some people would.
Well,
lesser people, let's say.
That's the road to downfall, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, it can't change it. It's happened. Got to make the most of it. There's no point. I mean, and I always say, and I always said this about David Richards and every other strong person, leader that I've ever come across. An expression, a raised eyebrow, the turning of the mouth. If blokes see that in your face, you've lost instantly. So the minute you go back to them and crestfallen and say to them, oh my God, we've been let down, we've been abandoned, we've been deserted, that would have been it.
Morality plummeted, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's not a conversation to have with them. So it's, we went back and I briefed up WAG. It was now morning, it was daylight. So if you kind of think of this way now, it's daylight, things swing in our favour now. If we were to engage them now, it's daylight, they're out in the open, it's 1 round, 1 kill.
I mean, you'd gone out and checked the areas. I'm going to put this without being too sensationalised. Did they pick up the dead, or were they lying about?
No, they were all lying about in the track in front of us. So we didn't get involved in that. The Nigerians then got the villagers to do it.
Right.
So they went and got them and took them in the jungle and buried them. We didn't get involved in that. So we went back to manning the defensive positions. So it's now like the blokes have rebombed the magazines, getting a little bit of scoff down the neck and preparing for what comes next. The most bizarre, surreal thing of it is the village went back to life immediately. So these people are now going about their daily business, so they're trading again. You know, they're moving around the village as if nothing had happened.
I mean, it's probably, they're used to it, I suppose, with everything that's been happening in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't affect them. And then we got a message saying that the QRF was coming. So that was about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. So we went back to the HLS to mark it, and sure as shit, the Chinook came in with one of the companies from Wampara, who basically took over our defensive positions, moved in, and done a relief in place with the blokes so that the blokes could pull back and then start, cleaning the weapons and getting a brew on and stuff like that.
Who took over?
Well, we left them to it. So the kind of company commander then took over. Wampara lads were darting about, securing the area, and then as a group we sat there and did some admin. And it was at that point that Wag and I had a discussion and went, right, if we're going to end this, now is the time to end it. Now is the time that, we could follow them up. If they were injured and wounded, they ain't got very far. So we kind of took the decision to go out on a bit of a fighting patrol. So we divided up what was left of us. There was 26. So we kept 2 in the in camp on the radio, the 2 radio operators, and then basically had 2 12-man groups. We briefed the CO or the OC of Wampara what we were going to do, and then we went out, 12 of us either side, me taking 12 on one side, Wag taking 12 on the other. The idea being that if we moved back through the jungle and followed them, then we'd bump into them and we could end it.
I mean, did you find anyone?
No. Found signs of them, mate, but, the usual stuff. There was ammunition lying about, there was blood and clothing and all that, but no, they just dissolved back into the jungle.
They'd been given a bloody nose and they couldn't stand up to it.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, we subsequently found out that they had and all the rest of it, but I think that, they'd obviously gone away to lick their wounds and decide what they were going to do now.
I mean, things changed rapidly after that, didn't it?
Well, I mean, things kind of almost sort of finished in a way, but we went back into the village. Now, we did the fighting patrol. We then walked back into the village. Wampara were there. And then shortly afterwards, another Chinook arrived with David Richards on and his command group. And we told him what would happen. And then the CO of Wampara came in and walked around, spoke to the company that was there from Wampara, and basically turned around to us and said, look, I need them Wampara lads back. I can't leave them here. I'm going to take them back and you're going to have to stay. So he kind of then said, realising the predicament we were in, he said, right, what do you want? So it was like kids in the sweet shop then. So we said, right, we need this amount of ammunition, we need the claymores, we need this, and we need 381mm mortars with a mortar team. And he went, okay. And that was the last we heard of it. We didn't expect it. We just put a wish list in. So the rest of that day and that night, that company of Wampara stayed and manned our positions. So basically the blokes could get their head down, because we'd been in there 10 days by now. And blokes were absolutely exhausted.
They would have been threaders, yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of had that first night. Now, all through that first night, the thing is with the RUF is their tactics was these animal screams and like banshees and whirring, and they used to sit in the jungle and just scream and scream all night long.
It's all a ket they're on, isn't it?
Yeah.
That must be quite unnerving when they're doing that, though, is it?
Well, it was, because we didn't know they were going to come back. Nobody knew, you know. So everyone was on tender hooks and that, you know. I mean, the good thing about it was there was 30 blokes from one para and 26 of us. So, you know, if they wanted to come and mix it up, then fair enough.
They're in for a shock.
Yeah.
So this was the third night then, and
So that was, if you like, no, the first day was only just coming to an end now, wasn't it? The 17th.
fucking hell.
So we're down through the whole of the day of the 17th and through the night of the 17th and into the first light of the 18th now. And then the Chinooks come back in to take the one para lads out, because the CEO said I could leave them here 24 hours and then they're coming out. When the Chinooks landed to take the one para out, then they just got shitloads of ammunition. So we'd had an ammunition resupply and 381mm mortar teams got off the back with mortar rounds.
Needed, yeah. Absolutely needed.
Yeah. So we're now into like day 10. And then it was a case of, right, if they're going to come back now. So we left them, we briefed the mortar guy up and we said, this is what had happened. This is where they attacked us from. This is the fallback plan. This is what we want to happen. We then said, we want you to just DF, go through all the DFs, mark them, and then brief the blokes up about calling in, you know, if we want to fire on any of those X-ray positions. And that's what he done. So they put a mortar plan in and then briefed the blokes up in the positions and said, you know, if you need to call it in, call it in. The other issue that was still out there is you can't drop 81mm HE all over the jungle when there's civilians walking about. So we said, if you're going to call a fire mission in and start dropping 81 HE, you need to be 100% sure of what it is, which you can't do. So to be honest, you know, the HE was only ever going to get fired if we could find where people were massing, which you can't do in the dark. The MVGs don't work. You've got no visibility.
I mean, it must have felt a bit better, you know, you must have felt a bit better having the backup of the mortars and plus the ammunition resupply.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Of course, you know, the mortars made a difference. The ammunition made a difference. We had 11 extra guys, three-man mortar teams and an MFC in his op, or, you know, so there was 11 extra guys, loads of ammunition, and if required, the mortars.
That made you feel more confident.
It was slightly, you know, a slightly better feeling.
Yeah, I'm saying, did that give you more confidence as well?
Well,
were you just like, right, bring it on anyway? I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're going to do it, and, you know, do it now. Yeah.
So what happened next then with it?
So we're now day 10, and that was really it. You know, the next couple of nights, again, probing. So we must have fired about 50 or 60 Alum rounds over the course of 2 nights. Didn't fire any HE because we couldn't be sure. There was civilians coming through the villages, coming back through, and they were reporting. Every time they came into the village, they were saying, we've come from here, and the rebels were, and they made us bury these, and they made us treat these, and, you know, so we kind of got an idea about what the sort of the count had been from the rebels, you know.
And it was quite high.
It was high enough.
Yeah.
It was high enough.
Did that put them off totally then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we then stayed in that jungle. We then stayed there for a further 6 days. So we're now on day 16. So it started as 2 and we were there for 16.
And you've become part of the village life as well.
Oh, I mean, it was outrageous. I mean, by now, obviously, we were totally ingrained. It was all hearts and minds. The villages were, you know, so what used to happen is when it rained, and rained for 3 or 4 hours, around the buttress bottoms of the trees where the holes were, you used to get these wild brown snails. They were about the size of an American football. Of course, the locals eat them. They're a delicacy. So they had all of them. They were getting these snails and showing, what they used to do was sharpen a stick, put the stick in and dig the flesh out, and then drop it in a pan and cook it, and add some herbs and stuff. So of course they were teaching everybody how to do that. So the blokes were eating that. They had people in the villages going to get water from the river for us. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned in the book they were delivering you bread, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah. They were making, bread rolls as they do of whatever, ingredients they had. So every night they would bring 26 bread rolls round to feed us.
What was this? What was the snail like?
Chewy.
I mean, I remember reading a book. One of the lads quite enjoyed it, didn't he?
Yeah, Nathan.
Yeah.
It become a staple part of his diet.
Well, I suppose must have it, that type of thing. I mean, because, and again, I know what happens is that you got ingrained in the village. You kind of feel protective for the people as well, more so than you would normally, because you've spent such close proximity with them.
I mean, and that, as I said in the books, by now, the kids used to come and they started making these like little cot beds out of bamboo for the guys to sleep on. The villagers are getting water. They're part of the life. The guys have now, been totally sort of been taken in by the village. And then obviously we still got the threat, and we were still worried for them, and we were still obviously had patrols going out. It was exactly the same. We still didn't know if we were ever going to get attacked again. So we were living every day. Yeah. We were still living every day like we were. And then on the 15th, on day 15, we got a radio message saying that on the morning of the 16th day, if you like, we were going to be extracted en masse and there would be no relief in place.
That's a fucking hard pill to swallow.
Very bitter pill to swallow. I've said on many occasions, of all of the emotional times I've ever experienced, that was the worst, because we then had to go and brief the guys and say, tomorrow morning we're leaving. We then had to tell the village. So if you kind of look at this, here's this village who 16 days before that had wondered who we were. They'd then helped us defend the village. They'd then watched the rebels attack. We'd then dealt with it. We'd then stayed on. The village hadn't been attacked. So they then said to us, well, when you go, what will happen to us? And by now, there's kids everywhere. So, we had to go back and tell the blokes. Of course, the blokes went absolutely mental. Why should we leave? We're not leaving, and all the rest of it. But, what you going to do?
You've got to go where you tell, really.
That night was our last night, the night of the 16th day. And then on the morning of the 17th, at first light, we started collapsing the position. By now, we told the village elder that we were leaving. And we then kind of en masse, we then walked down the track to the HLS while the two Chinooks come in, while everybody in the village was just stood watching.
It must have felt awful.
Fucking horrendous.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Beggars belief, doesn't it? I mean, operational taskings and stuff like that aside, you've got to feel for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't know. I mean, so we counted everybody on, got on board the Chinook, the left, and then the loaded, obviously looking out to the ramp at the back, sat on the back of the aircraft on the helicopter, staring at them as we kind of took off. And you're looking down at these people and you're thinking, we have no idea what's going to happen to you.
It's fucking heartbreaking.
It was a long 45-minute flight back.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, what was the reason for abandoning them? Is that the right word?
I think it's as good as any.
Yeah, true.
Operationally, it was done. They just said that they were withdrawing us to retask us.
Yeah. I mean, it was around that time that the IUF started petering out a little bit, wasn't
Well,
it?
what had happened is, if you want to use a word like fortuitous, what had happened is on the morning of the 17th of May when we were attacked, the leader of the RUF at the time was a guy called Foda Sankey. So he'd been in Freetown and he'd been captured in an intelligence operation and arrested and imprisoned. He subsequently died in prison a very short time afterwards. At the same time as that had happened, the RUF had attacked us and basically been,
Routed.
thinned, yeah. So if you were to put those two actions together, so the leader's gone, they've obviously had an encounter which has caused infighting. So what we think and what everything that we were told has led us to believe is that there was just a power struggle which led to a disintegration of the RUF. And they never really became a threat anymore, which created a vacuum which led to the West Side Boys and subsequently. So we're in the May of 2000, and then in that September you had the Royal Irish, and then you had the raid, the Up Barras, didn't you? So the vacuum created by the loss of the RUF allowed the West Side Boys to take control.
Or the frying pan into the fire, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you got back from there, did you feel as though you'd accomplished something? Because I think you had, really.
Well, we didn't immediately because we were trying to figure out what happened to the village. So it was like, so myself and Wag, we spent the next 24, 36 hours in the incel, talking to people, trying to figure out what would happen to the village. Could we get back? Could we do overflights of the village? Could we get the helicopters to fly over? What would happen? So it was all about that. And after 36 hours of doing that, we got called in and said, right, yous are all being flown back to the UK. So within 48 hours of being out of that village, we were on a transport aircraft back to the UK.
That's got to fuck with your head a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't nice. The only thing that we took from there is at the point at which we left, the village had never been attacked again. We then, obviously, when we got back to the UK, were pushing and pushing and pushing to see what had happened. And every report of everything that happened after that was that it got left alone. Nobody ever went back. So I suppose the feeling is that it never got attacked again and it was left alone.
Because one of the reasons being that they didn't know what was going to happen to them.
Maybe, and obviously the RUF at that point had been, disassembled, if you like.
So they're safe. Have you ever been back there?
Never been back. Shortly afterwards, I was approached by the Discovery Channel who wanted to go back. But as we were planning to go back, there was an outbreak of Ebola, wasn't there? So the Discovery Channel put it on ice.
And it's never reared its head again.
We never got a chance to go back now.
Bet you'd love to, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I know people who've been, well, obviously last year was the anniversary of Up Barras, 25th anniversary. So I know a large contingent of people went back to walk everything that happened during Barras. But nobody on that trip got a chance to go back to Lungi and visit Lungi. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, if there was ever an opportunity to go back and see, yeah.
It'd make a good documentary as well.
Oh, I think so.
I mean, who's going to... Dave Richards is always on about, like, the movie. Who's going to play you? He mentions it every time somebody asks him about it. It's like a running joke in the horse artillery, I think it is. So, I mean, you're back in the UK now, and let's move on to when you left the military. Was that time served, or did you leave early?
No, I left early. So
What was the reason for that, if you don't mind?
I mean, yeah, we came back from, obviously when we came back from Africa, it was just a massive review, an internal review of everything that had happened, and so you do your post operational report, you do your sort of after review, you do your lessons learned. So obviously from a unit point of view, you're trying to ensure that you're doing everything correct. But obviously then you start looking outwards again at everything that went wrong from a wider perspective. And that whole thing for me, I mean, at the time, the platoon was getting tasked. We were away training a lot. It was blokes out of country. We were losing people. We'd had injuries and horrific accidents. And there was just no sign of things getting any better. And I suppose if I was to be mature about it, I probably got quite petulant and went, right, there's a line in the sand now, and I've crossed it. I don't think it's going to get any better. We weren't getting any money. We weren't getting any funding. Blokes were strapped. We were buying kit. I didn't like it anymore. I loved the unit. I loved the blokes. I loved the job. And still is to me, and I'll defend it vigorously, probably the best job in the army. But I just went, right, I've had enough. And at the same time, I'd been offered a job out of the army, so I thought maybe this is the time to jump.
Do you regret that?
I did, because almost immediately, so I left in the March of 2001, and obviously in September of 2001, the world changed forever, didn't it? And I was going into London on a shift that day, knowing what would be happening. Some blokes would be packing kit, no blokes would be off. And I did contemplate for a briefest of moments about re-enlisting. Well, when I'd left, the OC at the time had said, look, Steve, if you think you've changed your mind, you can come back. You can come straight back.
Was the grass greener, though?
I mean, it's a different mindset then, isn't it? You're out. I was out. I was working. The money was okay. I wasn't in harm's way anymore. So I suppose there was that to thank for it. But obviously then you're watching the news, aren't you? And you're knowing what's happening, and you're knowing where the blokes are. So there was a little bit of that. There was a little bit.
I wouldn't put. I mean, I was going to say there, like, jealousy of them getting to do it, but it's not just jealousy either. I mean, you've got mates out there doing that. There's concerns as well. I mean, what's happening.
I mean, it was never jealousy. I was never jealous of it, because I left the military fulfilled. And I didn't walk around thinking, oh God, there's lads in firefights now. I was beyond that, I think.
So what made you choose the decision to write the books then?
So obviously there'd been a couple of other books come out about the platoon, and I was kind of approached with the proposition that this story was going to get told. I'd got wind that it was going to get told, and I thought, well, I'd like to tell it. And so I married up with Damien, who I wrote the books with, and we had a very similar approach to how it would be, a very singular understanding of what the content of the book needed to be, and we reached some very clear common ground about it, and I believe that the way that it would be written, there would be justice done to the story, to the blokes, and the endeavour itself. So yeah, that's how we did it.
I mean, again, and I keep going on it in this podcast already about how good the book is, but one of the things that I loved about it was that it doesn't sensationalize anything. Right? I mean, it doesn't have to. It's a sensational story anyway. But you do. I mean, how can I put it? In the book, when you're on the back of the Chinook, and I was driving, right, and you took off for the last time, leaving there, right. I fucking throat went. You know what I mean? I had a lump in my throat. I just thought, you fucking, I just thought, fucking hell, and it was. I mean, I've got fucking goosebumps now thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Damien's books are really good anyway, with your input, it's a fantastic story, and you get to know people in it.
Yeah.
When you started, as soon as you mentioned the snails, then I was just thinking of curried snail.
Yeah.
And Mojo. I don't know how much of a character he was in real life, but it comes across in the book. He was like a Nigerian prince almost type of thing.
Yeah, well, they all were. They were all characters, the Nigerians ones,
Yeah.
they kind of.
But it's a fantastic, book. And I absolutely, I recommend anyone who listens to this to get it.
No, I
to really
appreciate
go and get
that.
it.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
So what's your plans for the future then?
No, that's it. Back in my hometown, completely diversified now. Working for a site services construction company doing project management. We've got some really big projects. I work with my best friend from school. So yeah, I mean, if there ever was 180 degrees in the opposite direction, this is it.
Right, we've come up to bloody hell, 2 hours 45.
I know.
I wasn't expecting that. I was sitting listening to you all night, to be honest. I won't keep you much. Well, I won't keep you any longer, really. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
And I wish, I wish you all the best in the future. And I just hope that everyone who listens to this podcast buys that book.
Yeah.
They need to. I've got another one up there by Des Powell and Bravo 30.
Yeah.
I nearly read that one, but then I found out it was an audio book, so I listened to it.
Right.
And it's a good book. It's not as good as yours. Not as good as yours.
Don't tell Des that.
No. Well, I tried getting him on a podcast, but apparently he's not doing them for a while now. So.
Is he not? Okay.
No. But yeah, I would like to get him on because that's quite a good book. That's quite interesting. It's really funny as well in parts as well. That's quite good. Right. I'll stop the recording here for now. Again, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome, Frankie.
We appreciate it, honestly. Again, people go out and buy the book.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I enjoyed recording it. If you could just hit the like button, and also if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, that'd be great, because it'll help the channel grow. The more people will see it, the bigger it'll get, and the more guests I can get on, and the more people I can talk to. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, like I said. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully we'll be out next week as normal. Bye-bye now.